All right, hey everyone. So we are here to do a little Q&A session with the newest Three Blue and Brown members. I recently sent out a tweet basically telling people there has been growth, there are new team members, and what questions would people like to ask. And people certainly asked a good number, and I've filtered them down into a small little list here. So I'm just going to start by asking both of you guys, just tell people what your background is, both in terms of math, other things that you've done before this. Essentially, where were you before Three Blue, One Brown?
Oh, okay. Well, a while ago, I went to grad school. I was pursuing a PhD in mathematical logic at the University of California, Berkeley, in a program that was a mix of math and philosophy. I was there for 7 years, and then in the middle of writing my dissertation, for some reason, I chose to quit. And I went off to Google, and I worked at Google for a couple of years, and then I thought, let me try and do something else. So, and then I ended up here at Three Blue, One Brown. I guess that's all there is to say. Oh, I guess I also have a computer science degree from before that, if anyone cares about that. So.
Yeah, people care, just all the little details. Great.
Yeah.
Ben, joining us from Switzerland.
Yeah, so my name is Ben. I actually am German from Berlin, but I've been living here for quite a long time. I started in math and then switched to physics, and now I've worked as a math teacher for quite a long time after finishing my master's. And so you might even be tempted to call myself again a mathematician, but I'm really not settled between the two topics. I just love working with students or with other kinds of learners and showing them the wonders of both math and physics. And so when I saw that Grant was hiring, I just jumped on that occasion immediately.
One common thread among the questions that various people ask, you two obviously are very talented and could find jobs elsewhere and do something much more normal if you so chose. So what motivated you to join Three Blue, One Brown?
Well, it's an opportunity to do something I actually care about, that I'm actually interested in. So, there's lots of jobs you can get that you work on something and you think to yourself, I don't know, maybe there's a cynical or pessimistic view, but what I was doing was working on advertising technology and increasing click-through rates on ads, and I thought to myself, at the end of my life, am I going to feel proud of what I did here, or am I going to feel like, I made something that I enjoy? I didn't feel that way about what I was doing then, but what I would do in my free time, or what I would do to goof off at work when I was at Google, was to write math things and to think about math. And so I thought, why not try and get a job where I'm doing that for a living? And now I goof off by increasing click-through rates on ads. So, it's an opportunity to do something more interesting. So that's always more appealing to me.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, so I think this new job is sort of a continuation of what I see, where I see my talents and education and teaching. So, when you stand in front of a classroom, and I've been doing that for 7 years. It really teaches you to think on your feet and work through how to explain things and how to promote students' learning in a really hands-on way. It really gets the creative juices flowing, but in the end, I figured that I'm more of a deep thinker than someone who is, in the field, so to speak. And I think there's a place for people like that also in education. Maybe not in front of a classroom, but more on the sidelines, coaching and helping, developing new materials and new topics. And this is where I see myself really, where I can make the most meaningful contribution to education.
Awesome. So a lot of people are also curious, what motivated you guys to just get into math itself? Like, when did you first fall in love with math?
Okay, well, this is the sort of thing, I guess I could speak at any length about this. I could go on, but I don't know. I was always into math, even when I was a kid. And why is that? I guess there's a couple reasons. One is that I'm very egocentric, and people told me I was good at it early on, so I just kept pursuing it. I don't know, in first grade, my mom had taught me how to add 2-digit numbers before other people, and I did this in class, and we were like, oh, that's, wow, he's real good at math. And I was like, oh yeah, I am better than all of you. And then I really kept going that way. Yeah, I don't know, I was always into it even when I was a kid. I liked puzzles, math is about puzzles, it's about understanding things. Yeah, I don't know, I also, like I said, I could keep talking, but I was into computer science as well because I wanted to make computer games and video games. But then after a while, I was more interested in understanding how things worked behind, the scenes of computers than actually caring about computers themselves. So that also brought me to theoretical computer science on that side of math. But
and Ben, yours is a very different kind of trajectory into math, right?
Well, it started very standard, and it actually also stayed quite up until now. I mean, when I was 5 or 6 years old, of course, I knew how to add and subtract before I entered school, and math was always my favorite topic, my favorite subject in school. But yeah, maybe what you're alluding to is this little twist that when I was 6 years old, there was a math professor who, gauged my talents because my parents wanted to know whether they were to send me to school. And he said, well, that boy is good at math, so send him to a humanities school to make him learn languages so that part doesn't really wither away. And for me, that has stayed. Math is a language, and I love languages, and also games and puzzles. It's all connected. And yeah, this is something that very often gets lost in school, and I want to bring that joy of games and puzzles, of what if, of changing the rules and see where they carry you. I want to bring that back to everyone who's curious about that.
That's actually a good lead into one of the things. So I think I must have sent out this tweet very shortly after there was that Mathologer response to the number file video about 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 on a non equals -1/12. So there were multiple questions on there where what they wanted to ask a new team member of the channel is, what are your thoughts on 1 + 2 + 3 + 4, this infinite sum?
I have a big Quora answer on this if anyone wants to go see it written out. My thoughts are that almost everyone who talks about it annoys me, because there's the first wave of people who talked about it and said, oh, you great big dummy, you think this adds up to a positive infinite thing, but math is this mystical thing that tells us actually it's -1/12, and you're completely wrong if you think it adds up to a positive infinite thing. There's this mystical math answer. And that, of course, annoys me. But then all these people reacted by saying, oh, that's not the real math answer. The real math answer is that there's this one notion of convergent series, and you can't say it adds up to -1/12. It's a divergent series, and that's all there is to say about it, and it's just garbage what people are saying about it adding up to -1/12. And that also annoys me, because that's a very narrow point of view, a very rules handed down from on high kind of point of view on math. So what I would want to say is that there are different notions of what it means to add up an infinite number of terms. And of course there's different notions. For every concept in human life, there's different senses of the term. Every word has a number of different senses with family resemblances between them. And so there's different ways to generalize sort of familiar adding to adding infinitely many things, and some of them give, some of them have different properties, even conditional convergence of series. So they're just different senses of what infinite summation should mean.
Yeah, that's exactly that. We have different intuitions about finite sums, and we have to pick and choose which ones we want to carry over to infinite sums. And the amazing thing is that these intuitions that we have can't be fit together into the same thing. So we have to choose, but neither side is correct or wrong. It's as if you would have to choose whether the correct way of playing on a chessboard is playing chess or checkers. You can play both games.
There's a non-zero probability this will turn into a video. Okay, I think just last question before we close things off here. I mean, essentially, your thoughts on if you could change the education system, or you could change the place that math has within the education system.
Okay.
I'll leave it as an open-ended, what comes to mind when that prospect is thrown your way, this king of universe position?
Okay, well, I may not agree with everybody else, but my thing is, I feel like a big burden on the way things are taught is that we try and jam-pack into everyone's heads against their own will by the age of 18 everything they might ever possibly be interested in their life. And this means people are forced at some point in their life to sit through a bunch of classes on things that they don't at the moment care about. And that's useless. You can't teach somebody something against their will very effectively. And when I see little kids, crying and complaining that they don't want to do a bunch of Kumon worksheets, I sympathize with them, or I empathize with them, whichever where it is appropriate. I mean, that is very boring, just, training kids to be a bunch of robotic calculators. But another thing is, even apart from that, even if we were teaching a bunch of, group theory or topology or whatever to kids, some people will be interested in it and some people won't, and some people will have other interests. And if I had my druthers, if I had complete dictatorial control over the world, people would only have to be compelled to, study the things they're interested in at the time they're interested in it. And then later on, if their interests change, if they're 30 and they suddenly decide they want to study math, the same facilities would be available to them to go easily study math at the age of 30 that they would have had at the age of 15 or 22 or whatever. There wouldn't be this thing of, I don't know, we gotta, force everybody to study the same curriculum of standard interests against their will because some of them might want it later on, and there's only this limited time frame to do anything for anybody.
Yeah, I think math is particularly the subject where all the discussions around it are very content focused, and it's always this argument or this focus on what is it good for. If you think about it, hardly any other subject has to put up with that question so much as mathematics. If you think about literature class or history or physical education, you really don't. It's much more accepted that this is for learning things for their own sake, and and it's not about having to learn certain facts or certain procedures, but more about the big picture of creating an atmosphere of learning a topic, learning a subject. In mathematics, I want to bring back games and puzzles, and it's really not so important that certain topics have to be covered. I would gladly say maybe 70% is mandatory, and the teachers have freedom to choose 30% of their own curriculum, what they want to do. The thing is, we cram the curricula. We always talk about what we want to put into the curriculum. Everybody is supposed to learn how to code or is supposed to learn about modern mathematics, but nobody wants to take anything out.
So that's probably all the questions I necessarily want to get to. Before we close things off, are there any other points you would want to bring in for anyone curious to get to know you? We'll have more opportunities in the future also, so that shouldn't be This isn't the only chance of chats with the patrons.
I don't have anything in mind.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who is supporting on Patreon. Like I said, having others join was very much part of trying to take the dollars that are put in and turning them into either higher quality content because, more passion and man hours can be put into each video, or just more content. So there should definitely be more Essence of Blank series. You guys will be getting early access to those. Sridhar will be working on group theory. Probability will be handed off to Ben. Sometime this year there will also be a sequel to the linear algebra series. And just thank you everyone for joining us.